Hello, friends, and welcome to a double dip edition of Syracuse football and basketball postgame. 2 games, 2 wins. What a 24 hours for Syracuse sports in general, with Guyon Anthony's commitment last night and 2 very interesting games to discuss today. The men's basketball team needed double overtime to beat Youngstown State earlier today, 104-95 in double overtime. And Syracuse football tops its win total from a season ago. They're now 7-3 with a 33-25 win over Cal today. It's all presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse athletics. I've got a lot to say about all of this, both games. We're going to hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders coming up as well. But I want to jump in first and go all the way to the left coast. Joining us from Berkeley, Chris Carlson, syracuse.com, just out of postgame festivities for football. So we will start there. Chris, what did Fran Brown have to say about this one? I know he's happy he gets to hop in the shower after this one. The winners get washed. Mantra continues here, the viral moment this week. But tell me about that and what else he had to say about this one.
Yeah, he's still he's leaning into that one. And so is the team. Kyle McCord told us that the team, as he was going around and giving everybody game balls and that sort of thing, Yassine Willis said, "Coach, we got something for you," and gave him a bottle of Old Spice, a big bottle of Old Spice soap for the head coach because he can wash today. A present from the team.
That's great.
So that's pretty funny. He came in and he was listening to a song by Lil Durk, who is a guy that he's referenced often, called 100 Grand. He's smelling like 100 racks, which is a lot of money, I believe. If I understand the lingo,
yeah,
I think it's
I'm
a lot of
learning
money.
a lot here.
Yep. So they had a good time with, what was really the most thorough performance from Syracuse football we've seen this year in terms of there was no weakness, right? It's not like this, right? It's not like UNLV where the defense and offense were okay, but the special teams was atrocious, or the offense carried the day. Like, everybody was good. The whole operation was good today, and Fran picked on a couple, late penalties and thought they could have been better in the second half. But
yeah, you could quibble with some things from the
best
defense. The last drive in the game and things like that. But there is no question it is overall the most balanced effort, offense, defense, special teams they had all year. I understand that they topped the win total from last year, Chris, but Fran says that's not the standard, and 7 wins not good enough, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've. I don't want to quote him directly. I'm going to have to go through the tape, but it was essentially just, 7 wins is nice, but we're building a program and I want to win a national title. And, if you start telling all my players 7 wins are great, that's not good. I don't want them feeling that. I don't want them feeling accomplished at 7 wins. They got to do more than that to feel accomplished. That was sort of the message he gave. I mean, right, that's correct. We'll pump them up. We'll talk about how this is a sign of progress, that this is the 3rd time in 11 years that they've hit this mark, and that's pretty good for Syracuse football, especially in a head coach's first year. But he's not going to go about and talk about how great he's doing because he has 7 wins.
Interesting player development, Chris. Davion Kerr gets the start in this game, and Fran said that somebody being late to a meeting kind of spurred that, and here he comes in and makes some pretty big plays in this one. Syracuse got 2 turnovers in the first half, and he had one of them.
Yeah, France talked him up pretty good, at points all year. Jaden Bellamy, he told us, was out earlier this week, so they needed somebody to come in at defensive back, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you who, but we had another guy who was going to start, and Davion, he said, I've been working with Davion. He worked with the first string some this week, but he wasn't going to be the guy until one of our guys showed up for late for a meeting, and he was pretty intense about it, in terms of hey, if you don't, he said another guy talked back to one of the coaches.
Interesting.
Another guy was loafing during practice. So Davion gets the start, and if you're not happy about that, the transfer portal awaits. So that is a pretty blunt statement. But that's how he's going to get this program where he wants it.
Yeah, and it shows he's still building this program, right? They're 7-3. They got 2 games to go, but he's still putting in his Dart mentality, which you mentioned in the post game as well. Winners get washed as well, of course, but right up till, the discipline he mentions in his press conference often, Chris, as we're there on Mondays about class, who's late to class, like no detail to put that first letter in Dart goes unnoticed here by Fran Brown. And it's interesting that being late to a meeting, next man up in this case, pays out for Syracuse, and somebody blew an opportunity to start with. And that's it, Chris. You have Bellamy out. You have Marcellus Barnes out. Of course, the defensive line is down a few guys. But I want to switch over to the offensive line because they had one of their best performances in recent memory, and there was a switch made. Now, Darius Weatherspoon got into the game, but it felt like David Wollabaugh being at left tackle made a big difference for the offensive line today. LaQuint Allen gets over 100 yards.
Yeah, I actually think they both were pretty good when they were in the game, and the split I suspect is going to be pretty even. I felt like Demetrius played most of the second quarter. Wollabaugh might have played most of the second half, and I thought both were good. Wollabaugh, it did strike me, got blown by a couple times, I thought. But also played more of the game, and Fran has talked about how he thinks that playing more offensive linemen is going to help them finish games better. And it is certainly, right, the idea that we would have 7 playable offensive linemen at Syracuse, or 6, has not been the case for a long time, right? That's why this team has fallen apart in November's, is because once you got past the first 5, number 6 was a real step down. That is where Fran Brown's recruiting helps. It's where the optimism for the future comes from. That this depth that Syracuse has been lacking is going to improve. And you're right. We saw signs of that today.
Chris, any last thoughts before we let you go and do some more writing out there in Cal from post-game festivities, or your trip out there, or Kion Anthony? Anything you want to add on what's been a wild 24 hours for Syracuse football and basketball?
Well, if you can make this trip, it's beautiful. I am looking out at one of the most unique landscapes has to be in college sports. It's just the stadium is in a bowl, so I'm looking up at the rolling hills of California on one side, and if I go up a floor and look the other way, I can see Alcatraz Island and the Pacific Ocean. Awesome. This is a really beautiful place, and who would have thought that Syracuse football would have a much more comfortable time than Syracuse basketball against Youngstown State this week, and that was not on my bingo card.
Not at all. Chris, thank you. Great work out there, and we'll see you when you get back here to Syracuse, and more to come on syracuse.com from Chris's coverage out on the left coast. Thank you, sir.
See you, Brent.
There he goes. Chris Carlson, folks. Great to get his perspective from Cali. What a view. Alcatraz, San Francisco, and yes, the All-Coast Conference here as Syracuse goes to Cal and gets what was its most complete win of the season, 33-25 over the Bears. So as mentioned, we're going to talk about this matchup. We're also going to get into basketball today because I have a lot of thoughts on Syracuse needing double overtime to beat Youngstown State today, 104-95. We are going to get to that and some thoughts from our Syracuse Sports Insiders coming up here. But look, football-wise, this was, as Chris and I noted there, the most complete effort of the season. The defense, yeah, they let in that last drive there, and Cal made it a little more interesting because Cal's still in this thing, if you remember that old joke, right? There's got to be drama when it comes to Syracuse. But the fact that Syracuse was a 9.5-point underdog in this game never made sense to me. If I was a betting man, I would have hopped on that immediately. I certainly hopped on it in our picks on syracuse.com. You're going to give me 8.5 points. I am going to take that every single time. And I don't know what. Look, Vegas gets it wrong sometimes. Vegas builds a lot of buildings, and there's always cranes in the air in Vegas. And trust me, they get it right more than they get it wrong. But they blew it on this one. For Syracuse to go to Boston College and get run over by BC, who, by the way, gave SMU all it could handle tonight, but ultimately loses. Stanford, by the way, beats Louisville tonight. So a couple interesting games out there in the ACC as well. You are a 6-hour drive from Syracuse and just get manhandled by Boston College. You go all the way across the country, and they were smart to go out there a day early like they did to Vegas as well, and they controlled the game. And the most important thing in this game was that Syracuse got off to a strong start. They scored on their first 6 possessions, 5 in the first half, added 1 in the second half. Now, Syracuse only scored 6 points, in the second half after taking a 27-7 halftime lead. But that was huge because Syracuse had been outscored 38-0 in the first quarter. They had been terrible in the first quarter and, frankly, the first half in its past few games. Even Boston College, 5 possessions without points until they finally put up 14 points and somewhat made that a game, of course, and it came down to the end in that one as well, losing 37-31 to BC. But it was so important for this team to get off to a quick start on the road and to snap that streak of slow starts, stumbling out of the gate. And to do that on its longest road trip of the season was huge. Chris brought it up, the November wins. So now you got a Syracuse team that's 7-3, 2 to go, both at home, by the way. Connecticut, who's going to be off a bye, and is going to be tougher than you think. Connecticut's beat a lot of bad teams this year, so I don't really know how to read that team, but they're coming off a bye, and they're going to take advantage of that as much as they can. And then you finish the year with Miami at the JMA Wireless Dome. Both at home. You've already topped your win total from a season ago. You're going to, who knows what kind of bowl game. I mean, I think a lot of people are hoping it's not the darn Pinstripe Bowl again, but there is a tangible sign of progress. You took a step forward. You got, at this point, one more win than a year ago. 8-4 would be the finish everybody would love. It's what I predicted. I think it's what a lot of people predicted. I believe that was the most frequent prediction for Syracuse before the year. I mean, 9-3, of course, would be ideal. But being realistic here, you beat UConn, you give Miami all it can handle, and boy, if you finish 9-3 with that win, that would just be beyond anybody's expectations. So taking care of business on the road, these are things we haven't heard about Syracuse in recent years, especially in the month of November. Last year, it fit the narrative, last week, fit the narrative. This week, Syracuse busts that out. And to get that balanced effort that we mentioned, this was the 9th 300-yard game for Kyle McCord, who finishes in this one. McCord, who set the single-season Syracuse record for completions, by the way, 29 of 46, 323 yards, threw a touchdown to Jackson Meeks, or Jamal Meeks, if you prefer, from Tom Brenneman. That broadcast is awful. And the fact that Syracuse is finally escaping the death grip of the CW could not come at a better time. That broadcast is so bad, I can't even put it into words, but I will try. So you get Meeks' name wrong. You say the Syracuse game was at Stanford, that Omari Hatcher review, which was clearly a first down, but the drama they tried to put into that thing, that was an absolute joke. I know I'm missing one or two things here, but my God, that, and it's mostly Tom Brenneman. I don't want to pick on everybody, like the production crew and some other things, but Tom Brenneman was out of play-by-play and probably should have stayed there because that broadcast is terrible. And the fact that Syracuse had him 3 games in a row, thankfully, knock on wood, find some wood, knock on wood, they will not be on the CW for the rest of the season. I would imagine after being there for 3 straight. We know they're on ACC Network against UConn, and we'll see where the Miami TV slate is, but I don't want to spend all day ranting about that, but just an awful broadcast. LaQuinn Allen, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns, had the leaping play at the end. But Syracuse did what they had to do. There was a little drama, of course, in the fourth quarter, but you iced it with a 6.5-minute drive that ends in a field goal, but you got points, right? Syracuse played to win on offense today. 4 of 4 on 4th down, and that's what we've wanted to see from this team. Play to win, be aggressive, go for it on 4th down when it makes sense. There was a 4th and 3, frankly. I thought they should have taken the points, but then they throw it to Meeks. Next play, Meeks gets in for the touchdown, so they had the pedal down today. Trevor Pena had a career-high 11 catches, 97 yards. OG did OG things with 109 yards. We mentioned Meeks, who had a touchdown taken away from him, but had a touchdown catch. 4 catches, 38 yards. Awesome. The defense, 2 interceptions in the first half, as Chris and I were talking about a minute ago. Go into halftime with only 7 points given up. Now, Cal did get back in this thing, and it wasn't a perfect effort for the defense, but missed tackles were not as much of an issue today. Cal had 2 big runs. You don't want to see a 75-yard touchdown run, and then they added a 53-yard run. This is a big problem, whether it's Devin Grant, whether it's Deuce Chestnut, whoever's back there at safety. They're missing their angles on these plays. And for this to be a consistent thing, Boston College did it last. I mean, Boston College ran over Syracuse in general, but they had a couple big runs last week. You can't have this be a consistent issue. But all things considered, given what we've seen from the defense, you can still have your quibbles with some things that Elijah Robinson does on defense and some things that our insiders were saying. And no, you guys were saying watching the game. All fair, but considering where they've been and considering they're down some guys, you'll take that effort. You'll take them closing that out. Look, Cal came into this thing. Fernando Mendoza had a great game last week. He was okay today. Syracuse got to him early. They pressured him. The 2 interceptions. He was better in the second half when they were just throwing the ball the whole time and trying to get back in this thing. But all things considered, what we've seen from the defense so far this year, you're going to take an effort like that. And Fidel Diggs, again, Fidel Diggs either makes the biggest play of the game or he's a ghost. It feels like there is no in between with this. So go back to Georgia Tech. He makes that huge 4th down tackle in the 4th quarter against Georgia Tech. UNLV, overtime, makes a huge tackle that holds UNLV to a field goal. Syracuse gets the ball. LaQuinn Allen scores. Game over. This game makes a huge tackle to hold Cal to a 3-and-out. Now, again, they got the ball back and made it interesting. They did not get an onside kick. Had they, with a minute to go, who knows what we're talking about right now. Diggs was huge. And you know who else was big today? Special teams, particularly Jackson Kennedy. Think how inconsistent the kicking game has been this year. Brady Denneberg was just, I'll be nice and say inconsistent. Jaden O was just not ready for prime time. Jackson Kennedy, the transfer from Cornell, has steadied the boat. He had 4 field goals today. Let's look at Jackson Kennedy's field goals here. 24 yards, 32 yards, 42 yards, 43 yards. He was perfect on extra points, which are all things you cannot take for granted with Syracuse this year. Jack Stonehouse didn't have to punt a lot today, but when he did, flipped the field for Syracuse. They recovered the onside kick. Cal had one play in the first half on special teams, which I'll let that go, but you didn't have any of these major head-scratching bonehead penalties that Syracuse has consistently had on special teams this year. So that's the story of this game. Think of Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid. Danielson, you must achieve balance, right? Syracuse had balance on offense, defense, special teams. Fran Brown got the shower. Everybody's happy, right? So they're 7-3, 2 to go. That's another thing Tom Brenneman said today. They got 2 ACC games left on the slate. Did UConn join the ACC and I missed it? Maybe they should, but currently not a member of the All-Coast Conference, Tom. So they have 1 conference game left with Miami to end the season. UConn's not going to be easy, but Syracuse should be favored in that game. They should win that game. They should bank their 8th win and then see what they can do going into that last matchup with Miami. That's football. Let's get to basketball, shall we? Wow. Syracuse needed double overtime to beat Youngstown State at the JMA Wireless Dome today, 104-95 in double overtime. So Lemoyne, Colgate, Youngstown State, all, hey, shout out to Colgate, who's made the NCAA tournament, but you're telling me Lemoyne, who just joined Division I basketball 5 minutes ago, and Youngstown State, which, to my knowledge, despite being Division I for a long time, has never made the NCAA tournament, came in and gave Syracuse all it could handle today. How am I supposed to feel about this? Now, there are some positives from this game. J.J. Starling has got to be the alpha dog for this team, and he showed it today. A career-high 38 points, so many big shots, so many big plays, drives to the bucket. There were some, trust me, free throws. I just want to take stuff off the shelf behind me and throw them against the wall with the free throws on this team. Missed some free throws, made some free throws. Ultimately, you drop a career-high 38 points when your team needs you most. Congratulations, you have a leader. Because we haven't really seen that in the first few games from this team. It was always JJ. You know, at media day, when we were going around, we were asking these guys, who on this team should run for president? Like 90% of them said JJ. I think Chris Bell said himself. Everybody else said JJ. JJ's the leader. They want him to lead. They did that. Eddie Lampkin told us before the season started that he's a great passer and is confident in his passing. He was making Magic Johnson behind the back, no-look passes today. He was awesome. His effort was incredible. He ended up with his numbers today. Lampkin, 20 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists. The guy almost had a triple-double, okay? He was great in the paint. Donnie Freeman, the light bulb starting to come on a little bit for this kid. 19 points, 12 rebounds, double-double. Big plays all around, right? So you want to look at those three, and you want to tell me that they found some confidence, maybe going forward. They're starting to exert themselves and find themselves here. I'm not going to push back on that. Lemoyne, Colgate, Youngstown State have all pushed Syracuse to the brink. Guys, they play Texas this week. They've got some big boy basketball games coming up. Texas Tech or St. Joe's after that, right? That schedule is not forgiving. You've got a ACC game with Notre Dame coming up. You've got a game at Tennessee coming up here. Lemoyne, Colgate, and Youngstown State have pushed this team to the brink for the same reason. And I know it's only 3 games, but give me a break. The fact that you're this bad on defense, 3, 13, 30 games into the season is troubling. And I cannot be convinced. I've said this in the last podcast. I've written about it. I'll text our Syracuse Sports Insiders. I will scream it from the rooftops. Nothing else matters until this team improves on defense. I didn't listen to Adrian Autry's whole press conference today, so I don't want to, put words in his mouth. So I don't know if he said this today, but he said it last game. Remember the whole thing about we're getting 20 more possessions. Syracuse rebounded well again today. What were the rebounding numbers in this one? I mean, they had 2 overtimes. You would imagine they piled it up, but 50 rebounds to 35. Congratulations. You out-rebounded Youngstown State, and you did it to Colgate in the last game. Nothing else matters. I am going to be the most tunnel-visioned, stubborn observer of this team until I see better defense. That doesn't take away from what JJ did. It doesn't take away from what Lampkin did. It doesn't take away from what Donnie Freeman did. And you'd rather have a team be 3-0 and have a little bit of the clutch gene, no matter who you're playing, than not. It could be worse. You could be 0-3 or 1-2. Those are awful losses in terms of your NCAA tournament resume. But this team is miles away, miles from being NCAA tournament quality. And it is because they cannot play defense. And I want to say this as fairly as I can, and I don't want to just completely pick on this guy. But you know what? It is time for Adrian Autry to make the first lineup change of the season. Jaquan Carlos cannot play defense. He is a liability on defense. Look at what these teams are doing. They're watching the film. It happened again today. It happened in the first half. EJ Farmer, pardon me, for Youngstown State, had 26 points in this game. He didn't hit a three-pointer. He just drove past Carlos and at times J.J. Starling, frankly, all day. You had a Youngstown State, who, by the way, has like 10 new guys on that team. So I don't want to hear the excuses about the transfer portal, which everybody's dealing with. Carlos is a liability on defense. He doesn't make up for it on the offensive end. He had a couple of key plays late in the game and overtime, but he also missed a couple of free throws. As one of our Syracuse Sports Insiders said, let me see if I can find the clip here. Here it is, from David C. When your center is more assist than your point guard, you have problems. That's exactly right. Starting against Texas, you have to have a backcourt of J.J. Starling at point, and J.J. played a lot of point today. Elijah Moore. I don't understand why Kyle Cuff doesn't play. I'm not at practice every day. He didn't play a lot last year. He mixed in at times, okay? I don't have the benefit of saying, well, guys, I've been at practice, and he's no better than Jaquan Carlos. It can't be any worse at this point. Why Cuff doesn't get in, when we're going to see, the legend of Chance Westry come in, and I understand they're being cautious with him, but if he's ready to go, he has to play. You have to make that change now. Jaquan Carlos, again, I'm trying to be fair. He's a good kid. I've talked to him in the locker room. But if you're just asking me to objectively analyze this is from a basketball standpoint, he is not a starting point guard in the ACC. I know that on November 16th. And I got over the moon a little bit in preseason. I apologize for that. I think I led people down a road. I got a little too excited. He played great in exhibition play. And you're thinking that's exhibition play, right? Well, Lemoyne, Colgate, Youngstown State, and Syracuse. And you want to be my latex salesman? Syracuse wants to be an NCAA tournament team. They want to finish higher than 6th in the ACC. That we're talking about a 20-12 team last year that needs to win 3 more games, either in non-conference play or ACC play, to be in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. And you're playing defense like that? I don't care what the date is. I don't care what month it is. You cannot be serious, to steal another phrase. And it's not going to fix all your problems here. This is why I don't want to pick only on Carlos. But that's a change that has to happen now. I said it about football last week. Now, Weatherspoon played. Wollaboss starting today stabilized things. I'll give Darius Weatherspoon, who's fighting through a shoulder injury, to be fair, credit that he played better today. But for the most part, he's been a liability at left tackle in recent games beyond the injury, right? They made the change. Fran Brown saw it. That's why, and I know we're talking about different sports here, but that's why he's rotating guys at offensive line for depth, for injuries, and to get them out there so they don't go in the transfer portal, frankly, okay? Carlos came out of the portal from Hofstra, and you're taking a risk that he can make that leap. You're taking that risk that Jair Davis can come from Delaware to Syracuse, that Lucas Taylor can come from Georgia State to Syracuse. That's the risk you take. You hope that talent wins out here. I know this. Carlos is not your starting point. He can't handle it. He cannot defend. If Youngstown State, and I know there's good players all over college basketball, but if you're telling me Youngstown State, who, by the way, Ohio State beat Youngstown State by 40 earlier this week. Farmer was terrible in that game. He has 26 today. Guys, this is simple. It's not going to fix all your problems, but you have to change that backcourt. Can Carlos play a role? Sure. But he is not the starting point guard on this team. I don't know what Autry is seeing. You try it, you bring in the transfer, but you got to make that change. I remember when Boeheim made the change early when Joe Girard got in, right? Joe Girard was supposed to be eased into having a role on that team after 2 games, or maybe it was 3, but it was wicked early that season, right? He got in and played the rest of his career. So that change has to be made. But it's not just Carlos. That's why I said I didn't want to just pick on him in this game. This team can't keep anybody in front of them. There are noted exceptions. There are noted plays. There are moments. But why this team is as ineffective defensively at this point bewilders me. They have wanted to play man-to-man defense. Man-to-man defense is, put a percentage on it, but I'll say 80% for sake of argument. It's effort. It's hustle. It's get back. Some of that was better in this game. The transition defense, let's look at the fast break points today. Syracuse actually beat, and a lot of this came late in the game, of course. They finally got into transition and beat them in fast break points 16-14. So that improved, right? But nothing else matters until this team can get to a competent level defensively. Because until they do, how can they, based on what we've seen so far, they're not making progress in that department. And I know we're only talking about 3 games here, but how are you going to run with Texas and Texas Tech or St. Joe's, whoever they end up playing, and Tennessee and Notre Dame, heck, Georgetown, anybody, Cornell? Look on the schedule ahead. What I've seen for the 3 games is, and they've won these 3 games. So credit where due, right? But you had Lemoyne, Colgate, and Youngstown State take you to the brink. Okay, Colgate came off a loss to Drexel. Youngstown State came off not just a loss, they got pummeled by Ohio State. And they're coming into the Dome and pushing Syracuse to the brink of losing. That, to me, is an emergency on defense. Some of our Syracuse Sports Insiders were saying, well, Brent, should they play zone? I don't think you can rule anything out. Zone defense, 3-3-5, 4-2-5, the Chicago Bears 40. Name a defense, and they should try it. They've got to make lineup changes. You got to put JJ at the point. Moore maybe starts. Mixon, Cuff, Mixon. I don't know. Carlos can still play, but he's not the starting point guard on this team. He's just not. And I understand there's a team dynamic there. They've been working together all year, but once you see the results and you just got to put your hand on his shoulder and be like, look, kid, we're going to work every day on this. And he was a 2-time defensive player, all defensive player at Hofstra. We're seeing that's just a different level here. And I know he prides himself on his defense, and nobody feels worse than he does, right? That's why I feel bad just kind of dumping on him here. But if you're asking me to tell you what I see and to analyze this objectively, he cannot defend at this level. So you've got to change that. You've got to play your best guys. Is Moore ready to step in? Like I said, Joe Girard was. Elijah Moore is a talented player. He's a freshman. He's working out some kinks. Trust me, he's a bit of a gunner out there. He loves to shoot. Defensively, he's still, there's some things he's got to work on, but he's a freshman, right? You got to make that change, and you got to make it now. He's free to, if I would love to be wrong about this, but I don't think I'm going to be. I don't think I'm going to be. Remember, we were saying, Carlos, I don't think I'm going to look back on this with regret that I was overstating this. So, you certainly get your money's worth with this team, as I believe one of our Syracuse Sports Insiders is going to say. But it just feels like you know what the feeling is, really, that they're getting away with it. The prevalent feeling I have is they're getting away with this. Now, the effort it takes to win a double overtime game, guys, free throw shooting today. I'm going to throw up 25 of 38, 65%. Now, Eddie Lampkin, God love him. That kid plays his butt off. He's making the great passes. He's getting better around the hoop. But Lampkin, if he's going to have the ball that much in these close games, he's going to get to the free throw line. So you got to balance that out. 4 of 10. I mentioned JJ, 8 of 12 at the free throw line, right? You're not going to be perfect at the free throw line, but you can't be 65% from the free throw line. They've got to figure that out with Eddie, because when Eddie's cooking, when he's getting to the hoop, let him cook. Literally, he's a chef, right? I'm sure you've seen some of the Instagram posts, and we've written about it on syracuse.com. He's literally a chef. He actually wants to get into the restaurant business, right? Let him cook. But 4 of 10 at the free throw line, that's tricky. You got to figure that out. I loved what I saw from Freeman today. I've been telling you guys, Freeman's good. He's had that deer in headlights look a little bit, but man, he played the game today. I saw hunger in his eyes. I saw Lampkin finding him open in position. He's got to improve on his defense. Who doesn't on this team, right? But 19 and 12, his second double-double of the year. This is a guy who can play and is going to improve as we go here. So all of these things are ancillary. All these things are a firm second on the list until they solve. And to me, siren emoji. It is an emergency on defense. And it's not just Carlos. Carlos is a big problem there, but it's not just him. JJ's getting blown by. Other guys are out of it. Like, defensively, this team is lost. It's lost. And how does that improve? Like, hottest fire makes the strongest steel, to go back to an old Paul Pasqualoni expression. You play better teams, you'll play better defense. I don't know about that. So that Texas game, talk about a huge litmus test, right? We discussed the importance of non-conference games. We've been talking about this for the past couple of years with the changes made, with the net rankings. You guys know this. You don't need Uncle Brent to tell you about that. You know how important it is. How are you going to get those 2 or 3 more non-conference wins that you're going to need to strengthen up your non-conference slate when Youngstown State is running you to double overtime? A team that got beat by 40 by Ohio State the other day. Lemoyne is running you to the end. Colgate, I know what Colgate's done in recent years, so you give them a little more credit, but one game like that is one thing. 3 games, that's a pattern. You got Texas and Brooklyn Thursday night. Either St. Joe's or Texas Tech the next night. Cornell. You can't. There is no one on this schedule now that you can look at and be like, oh, that's a 20-point win. And it's not even that. It's not margin of victory is important in non-conference play, don't get me wrong, but it's not, oh, man, they're not beating these teams by 20, 25 points. You're getting taken to double overtime. by Youngstown State. Did that just come out of my mouth? Yes. Yes, it did. So this is all in the backdrop, of course. I'm here 24 hours ago talking about Kiyan Anthony committing to Syracuse, Sadiq White committing to Syracuse. So no matter how this season goes, there is a beacon over the hill. There is a great recruiting class coming in. Syracuse had a moment last night, and that commitment is still big. It should give you all the warm and fuzzies that it did. It should excite you, all those things, right? But then the team gets on the court 24 hours later. Do you know what Kiyan Anthony said yesterday, amongst many things? And I would really encourage you to, man, Mike Waters and Scott Trimble went to New York, knocked it out of the park with the videos and stories that they did. Donna DeToda had some amazing analysis on the class, on Kiyan himself. If I can say so myself, I'm proud of my colleagues. I think they knocked it out of the park with that coverage. But I just want to pull up something that Kiyan said in one of his interviews yesterday. Just give me a second here to find it here. It was a simple statement, right? And that simple statement, if I could find it, because I want to quote him accurately here, just give me 1 minute. But it was, he basically, to steal a phrase from Autry, wants to bring Syracuse back. And by the way, here I am well over a half hour into this podcast. That is not the orange standard, how you're playing defense. I think that kind of goes without saying at this point here. But it was a simple phrase from Kiyan. Kiyan. It's Kiyan, by the way. I say Kiyan. I pronounce that. It's my accent coming through. I apologize for that. Kiyan says, here it is. I want to show people what Syracuse basketball is supposed to be like. I want to show people what Syracuse basketball is supposed to be like. What I've seen from the past 3 games, even at 3-0, pretty simple to say. That's not the orange standard. That's not what Syracuse basketball is supposed to be like. So that's a telling statement from a 17-year-old kid who, of course, the family connections. I mean, Carmelo was oozing with pride last night. He was emotional. Kiyan bought into all of that. But he's also got to go where it's best for him to make not only a name for himself basketball-wise, but all things considered. And that's a pretty good class he's coming into next year. But he knows, too, to say that. Like, he's being looked at here along with Sadiq White and some others, but he's the main character in this story. Read the quote again. I want to show people what Syracuse basketball is supposed to be like. Here we sit. What we've seen these last 3 games, that ain't it. And it all harkens back to the defense. So lineup change, zone, press, whatever it is, they have got to fix this. And here I am. It's like that great Saturday Night Live skit. I don't know if you guys remember that one. You need to fix this. It's easy for me to get on a podcast and be like, you got to fix this. But you do, right? This team will not go anywhere if it can't make stops, if it can't be a competent defensive team. I will give them credit for how they won this game. Throw aside who it is, how. Sometimes the how matters. To dig deep, for JJ to take over, for Eddie to come into his own, for Freeman to improve. Like all those things matter, and they're important. And you got to be fair and put that into the conversation. But you're at a point, and you can't map these things out. You got to see how it plays out, then make changes, make the adjustments. You got to coach. Why this team lags on defense the way that it does is a major concern, and you got to make a lineup change. Texas. If Carlos is in the starting lineup for Texas, to me, that's a mistake. And again, that's no offense to that kid. I'm analyzing this basketball-wise. You got to do what's best for the team. And right now, he's not the best starting point guard for this team. He's just not. So you do have options. You can put JJ at the point. You could put more in. You can see what Kyle Cuff can bring you. I don't think he's a starter, but you can mix him in more. He didn't even play in this game. When the elusive Chance Westry gets Emily, you have combinations that you could try. Again, I didn't listen to his post game after this game because I went right into football coverage. So forgive me if he did say this, but he said it after the Syracuse's last game against Colgate. He's still trying the lineups. He's still mixing things up. Great. If he's willing to do that and understands that, then we need to see it. Next game, it's got to change. got to start now, right? I was just bewildered watching that. It was entertaining. I'm going to go through our Syracuse Sports Insider text here before we exit stage left here, but I'm just bewildered. I'm like, sports, all that, all the cliches I'm supposed to say. You're getting run by Youngstown State. You're going to double overtime. Against who? And it's the third straight game this has happened, and it just harkens back to what we said. The defense, it's an emergency. That's where we're at. You could say I'm hyperbole, all that. Tell me I'm wrong. Show me where I'm wrong. I'm the guy at the table, right? Tell me I'm wrong. I don't think you can. Let's see what our Syracuse Sports Insiders had to say about this one. And we would love for you to join the club. Come on in. The water's warm. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you get to text me directly. I text you guys as a group the latest information, opinion, analysis, and a lot of texts flying during the basketball and football games today. It was great to see the wave of emotions, which bottom line, Syracuse did win 2 games today, despite what I've been saying, right? But being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you direct text message access to me. We're giving away tickets from the Insiders. We're getting together in Vegas from the Insiders. Hopefully another meetup coming up soon here in Syracuse, and so much more. We'd love for you to join today. Just hit that link, joinsubtext.com / Syracuse Sports. It's just $3.99 a month, and you can try it free for 2 weeks. Frankie let us off saying, what a 24 hours. Cayenne signs on the dotted line. The men's hoop team wins another annoying thriller. That's a good way to put it. An annoying thriller. And may have found its alpha dog. And Coach Fran can shower. So there's a mix of football and basketball reaction here. Paul Ellis says, good road win by Syracuse with a lot of them going in. College football has got to do something about these horrible quarterback roughing calls. The one against Barron almost cost Syracuse the game. Brian says SU finally put together 4 quarters of solid football, something I wasn't sure was going to happen during McCord's tenure as the season wore on. For this reason, this is a really big win. And that's a really good point by Brian. To put together a game like this in November on the road, now you're coming back home for 2. You've got to utilize McCord as much as you can. You got him 2 more games. And I'm going to say, too, I don't think he plays in the bowl game. You got him 2 more games. Think how quick that went. Utilize it as best as you can. And they did that today. He adds this, and drastically changes my outlook on what I think this team has been and is capable of. From Ryan F., I can't believe I'm saying this, but special teams came through today to win this game. 4 field goals, all extra points, good punts, and an onside kick recovery. Not Lacey's boyfriend. This goes back to hoops. This is unacceptable to not be prepared for the start of the season. There's no way a legit head coach does not know that there are issues. From David C., who says, when your center has more assists than your point guard, you have problems. We put that out there earlier, but that's a good one there from David, so we wanted to highlight that again. Eric J. says, I can't remember ever having the 3 opening games be this close. It's aggravating, but the fans definitely get their money's worth. I guess that's a positive note to close on there. On that note, Eric J. So we appreciate that. Woo! What a 24 hours it's been. One of the most anticipated recruits in Syracuse basketball signs on the dotted line. Youngstown State pushes Syracuse to the brink, but the Orange do win in double overtime, 104-95. In football, taking care of business in their most balanced game of the year at Cal with a 33-25 win. This has been the double dip edition of both Syracuse football and basketball postgame presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for SU Athletics. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Thanks to you. Please subscribe if you haven't. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, so you know when a live edition is up and running of this postgame show and when a new episode of Syracuse Sports drops. So please do that. Please enjoy your weekend. Go Bills. And we'll talk to you next time here